Welcome back to the Saved Artist Podcast, everyone. Today we have Peter Pistola, a fashion designer, brand designer, and entrepreneur. He helped build For What It's Worth, a luxury streetwear brand, and currently works for Louise Vuitton. His most recent venture is relaunching Lace Did It, a luxury streetwear brand. Welcome, Pete.
How's it going, y'all?
It's going.
It's going well, man. I'm super excited to have you here. Super pumped. I know a little bit about your story, and I know your story will impact many lives. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Without further ado, let's just dive in. How about we just dive in, right? Let's get right to the content. So you're a fashion designer, a brand designer, and an entrepreneur. That's a lot of titles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That seems to be like a recurring thing for artists, right? We just, if we're not changing them, we're adding to what we do, because art just bleeds into so many different categories. Right?
So many different categories. And I want to kind of just talk about your journey getting to being all of these three, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, because I know there's a lot that you bring in your creative outlets. And how did your journey start as being a fashion designer, or how did you get into the art form of just fashion in general?
So to keep it kind of like the Cliff Notes version, I would say in high school I was always really intrigued by like dressing. I would say even it goes back even further. When I was a little kid, I was always like interested in like the way certain things looked. Like I noticed when somebody would wear something specific even as a little kid, and then in high school it just like kind of amplified, like because everybody was into trends, everybody was into Jordans, everybody was into dunks, everybody was into like they wanted to look fly, they wanted to look nice at their whether it was homecoming, whatever.
The baggy pants. Did you ever see the socks and the chucks?
Oh yeah, the socks. Yeah. I used to stop, man. And that's another thing, is like I feel like I've been through every style you can possibly think of. I've gone through it, even if whether it was like a fashion do or a fashion don't. Like I stuffed the chucks. I wore shirts probably up to my knees.
Rubber band on the bottom of the jeans.
Used to
all
do that. Yep, all that. And even like bandanas. Like I did bandanas like around like my like baggy jeans and stuff like that. Just like, just I loved dressing. And in high school I really wanted to pursue fashion. I wanted to go to FITM. For the longest time I thought I was actually called to pastoralship, even at a young age. And so for me it was like I wanted to do something that was going to promote whatever God wanted for my life, which is it's not a bad thing, because it was kind of crazy how things turned out. And then it's like, now I'm back to fashion too. But I really wanted to go to FITM. It didn't happen. I kind of went through this journey of finding myself, and it kind of just like things just began to line up, where it's like I had a mentor who actually saw what I was really interested in and saw like gifts that I was kind of like holding dormant, or gifts that were like dormant inside of me. And
when you mentioned that you wanted to go to FITM, what was kind of the idea behind that? Did you want to study, because obviously FITM is for those of you guys that don't know, FITM is an art school, right? And it's located, is it here in LA? Or?
Yeah, it's downtown Los Angeles.
Angeles. Yeah, we had another guy who came onto the show, and he went to FITM. Actually, yeah, he went to FITM. And but what was it that didn't get you to kind of go into FITM? Was it because did they not accept you in, or?
For me, I'm the first to graduate college in my family, and my dad kind of had some community college experience, but when it came to the whole like college venture, even though there was like counselors and stuff like that, I kind of, as much as I had my relationship with God, like I always kind of had like I don't want to say a negative mindset, but there was always this mindset of like, I just go to community college and that's what I do, because like that's what my dad was gonna do, and that's where he got. And so when it came to like, why don't you apply to FITM? Why don't you actually see if they're gonna accept you? I really didn't have that push per se to be like, all right, like I'm gonna pursue this. And then also my family was always kind of very big on, the norm, well, I'll call the norm of just going to college, getting a degree, getting a good job. And so for me, it was like, well, how much is fashion really going to pay me? And so those were all things that I really wanted to consider at a young age. And so for me, it kind of seemed at the time like, I don't know if this is really going to pay me in the long run. And because of that, that was another contributor alongside, like, what does God want me to do with my calling? So it was kind of like there were like certain, trials, maybe certain things that I was up against at a young age, like not knowing and not really having, I would say, like proper guidance to be like, no, like you can do it, whatever you want to do, like you can make happen, like, and these things will follow.
And right during this time, obviously you mentioned your parents and how your parents also did it. You go to community college, and how much did they support your dreams?
They've always supported things that I've wanted to do. I just think for me, it came to like, they didn't know unless I was vocal about it. So for me, it was like, there were certain things that I felt like I could express to them, and then certain things that I felt like, all right, like, I don't know if they'll be up for this. So like, even though they were very supportive, definitely my mom was very supportive. My dad, was kind of like, well, just make sure that it's like a wise decision. My dad's always been very keen on like, make sure that you know what you're doing, and this is a wise decision going in. But yeah, they definitely support it for sure.
It reminds me of a conversation I had with my wife last night. We were talking about, kids and stuff. And she's like, what are you going to, because I'm starting this other venture. She's like, what are you going to do if your kid comes out like you and is an artist and wants to do this and that? And because we don't take the traditional route, right? It's not like we go to college and you get a job and you move up. There's really no moving up in art forms, and then you get a nice pension and you retire. And I told her, I was like, look, he could be a painter for all I care. I just want him to be good at it. Like whatever he or she decides to do, just be great at it, And I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, our parents can sometimes be very weary or kind of like, are you sure that's like the smartest thing to do? Have you had that?
Yeah, definitely. I remember talking to my mom, same thing. I was like, Mom, I'm gonna go to school, but I'm gonna go to school to be a musician. I'm gonna be a music major. She's like, why don't you go to school to be a lawyer? I'm like, I don't want to be a lawyer. Cause my mom, she grew up in being a lawyer and she was like, just stick with the tradition. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And, I found it boring. I didn't find it very creative. And during this time that you were, going through this season, how much of a role would you say that because you talked a little bit about a mentor during this time, how much of a role did that mentor have in your life during the season as far as the next step to move into fashion or to move into brand designing?
Man, so it's kind of interesting because if I really look back, and I'm not saying, my father necessarily, I feel like my father really did the best that he could to his understanding, which is amazing. But it's interesting that God really aligned certain men in my life, like even coming up, like little by little. And I feel like each one of them had their own different role. And it's like each one took a step in relating to fashion. My mentor definitely played a big role for me because it was a situation when I came around him, he was just starting his venture. He was just starting his brand. I would say it was maybe about like his second year in when I first met him. And he had really I didn't say anything. I just was his friend at the time. And he was sort of like gifted with that ability. He's gifted with that ability to be able to look at somebody, see somebody, and actually be like God reveal certain things about them, and he just be able to be like, let me activate that, like let me actually show you that this is like possible, and like let me actually bring this up or bring this out of you. And for me, that was really what he did, like going from one stage in my life, from one season to another season in my life. Like he very much was that person present to kind of challenge me or like help me to I would say develop my thinking, even when it came to fashion or even style, whatever it was that we were dealing with. Sewing, like he was there like when I was like trying to learn how to sew. He was there when when I was like, he knew that I could sketch, but not necessarily design clothes. And so he was there through each step to be like, all right, like this is how it's done. This is how we source fabric. This is how we actually get it produced. This is how.
Oh, that's actually really helpful.
Yeah. So he very much like, and it's interesting because a lot of the hits he championed. I would definitely say that like I'm privileged to know him too, because he very much championed a lot of the hits that I didn't have to take later. Like a lot of the hits that he took, like just trying to figure it out. He didn't go to fashion school or anything like that. Like, so for him, it wasn't like, it was just whatever information he found out or like just experience doing it. So like a lot of the hits that I could have actually taken, he already took it, which was interesting.
And how old were you during this time, during this season?
So let me see. It's been for sure 10 years with him, and I am 29. So I was like around 19, 20 getting involved. Yeah, 19. I'll say 19.
And that's really the one of the best ways to learn is through someone who's been in the ropes and all that. But answer me this. So in fashion, is it something that someone has and, just needs to kind of develop it, or can it be learned? Like, I don't know anything about fashion. I was on my way here talking to my mom and sister, and they're like, "Oh yeah, they mentioned brands, and they're like, oh, Gucci this," and like I was like, "Oh, I know Gucci. That's like the one." But I've never been so great at it. But is it something that kind of like you pick up on those around you, and you start to say, "Oh, this cardigan goes with this shirt, and it matches with these colors." Can it be learned, or is it something that you just kind of have, and can it be developed?
I'll say it's both for sure. Like there's certain things that I'll say like come natural, because if you really break down fashion like to, I'll say, the core, like it really comes down to like recognizing a texture, recognizing a shape, recognizing, like, it's kind of interesting if you really break it down. Like it comes down just like music, or anybody who does music, it comes down to like, all right, this is an actual note, like this makes this sound, like this sound with this sound now makes like a melody. Like, so it's sort of like, it's the same way with fashion. Some people are I would say they have a certain gift, or it comes natural to them to be able to see these things immediately, but it's also learned. Like I would say I definitely had some sort of foundation where I saw that, and I'll even go and definitely give my dad some credit as well, because my dad always liked to look nice, and he always liked to kind of dress up. So for me, like I kind of grew up also seeing like a certain, like what they call sauce or style, like so it definitely comes like there, it may very much come natural, but it's also learned and developed. Because for me, it was like I had somewhat of a foundation, but my foundation amplified as I began to actually dive in and educate myself. So.
And when it came to educating yourself, obviously, was it more on the job, quote unquote, versus what you learned, let's say, I mean, nowadays everyone says what you learn on YouTube. Or
I actually have a fashion class that I'm like, I'm on the first episode.
That's awesome.
But Tan, the designer.
Yeah.
I was watching one of him, and I was like, wow, this is like a science.
Yeah.
Like he's like absolutely no board shorts, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess I gotta throw out all my board shorts now. But yeah, continue with the question.
Yeah, no, it was just that. Like, how much would you say that you learned on the job versus what you were doing research on? Because fashion is something that is constantly changing with culture, right? You would say.
Yeah, definitely.
And how much of it would you say that you would have to change your aesthetic, or change your looks, or change your styling just to keep up with that? Because now, obviously, I don't want to dive too forward, but you've recently launched or relaunched At Least Did It, which I absolutely love, by the way. I gave you so many props on that, bro.
It's really dope.
It's really good. Yeah, you guys got to go check out At Least Did It. You have to. It's good stuff. And but yeah, like how would you say about that how much did you learn on the job?
So for me, if I were to kind of put it into a percentage, I would have to say that you definitely learn by application a little bit more, but then I also want to say it depends on how you learn. The reason being is because I mean, even entrepreneurs in general will tell you, like, research is everything. Like, research is everything. Like, he who has the, like, research, and even, I mean, it's really, even if you want to break it down to biblical, you know, principle, like, you know, my people perish for the lack of knowledge. Like, so, you know, those who actually have the education, what it really looks like is you have the ability, now that you've retained information and you have information that's become available to you, but it doesn't manifest until you put it into action. So until you actually apply that, it then begins to manifest. However, when you are on the job and when you're actually physically doing things, it's a different learning, because it's still learning also. And it's different from research, but it's still learning, just like research is. And it's more so where you begin to recognize certain things that you won't recognize unless you're actually in it and you're actually in the trenches. And you said, you know, I had to style a runway shoot. And I understand, like, you know, what the culture is as soon as you are backstage, and what it looks like trying to get the models dressed and switching from one outfit to the next, actually, you know, between sets, whatever it is, like, actually being able to say, like, I know how I need to position myself and posture myself this whole time that I'm back there. Or and then also just learning about it, because somebody could just learn about it and hear about it, research it, say, what does that really look like? What does that take? What is the commentary behind those who've already experienced it? So it's more so, it's like a different manifestation, actually, you know, being in it. But I would say it's definitely, it is both equally important. I would definitely say that there's a different learning pattern when you're actually in it versus what you are when you are researching. You create the head knowledge when you research. So it's definitely just as much as important, but definitely manifestation of what you're doing is as much as important.
Yeah, because I'm a hands-on person myself personally.
Yeah.
So I like to kind of get dirty. I love reading, I love researching, but then it doesn't really click until I'm actually doing it for myself. And I think a lot of people are like that. One thing I did want to dive in a little bit is just talking about your designs and talking about how you create. How much of a role does kind of your faith fall into that, right? Like whether it's like, hey, you know, taking it into, like, I'm gonna do the best I can because the Lord deserves the best, right? Do unto man as you will for the Lord. But how much of your designs are just like, yo, like, this is just a gift that God's given me? Like, I just want to kind of understand a little bit of your faith into what you bring.
So it's everything. And even to my creatives who, you know, who don't know God, or who don't, you know, necessarily, they haven't received Jesus and they haven't come to that point. It really is everything. I always say that creatives should understand God even more.
Ooh,
it's interesting.
Good.
Yeah.
Creatives
should really understand God in a different way than most people do. And it's not to say that not everybody can be creative, or not, you know, that people don't have the capability to be creative or generate that, but it's a different construct to say that you're in a creative field. And that's like when you actually get into your zone. Like, everybody has like a creative zone, like who's a creative, like where they get in and they tap into this like creative zone where it's just like they're moving. And in that, like, we ought to really understand God even the more, because we are made in his image. And if we're made in his image, he's first the creator. So we're the creation, but we understand that he's created us to be a creator and a creative in that. So it's kind of interesting, because when you actually finish a product, or when you finish doing something, and you can actually just sit back and look and actually understand what it is that you just made, it's the same way that God sees us as his creation, and we're made perfect. At the end of the day, it's something that we gave our all. It is something that we value even deeper. So it's interesting because creatives, I really believe, there should be no excuse that a creative does not believe in Jesus, because it's really that much. It gets deeper. Like, and that's just like the surface. It really does get deeper. But I would say faith has everything to do, and I'm not like saying like I'm a perfect person. Like, you being a believer and being a believer doesn't mean that you're a perfect person. It just means that you walk with God. Whatever season you go through, it means that God is with you, and it doesn't mean that God wasn't with you when you didn't have him. It just means that you now have a communication that you've established with God, and you have a relationship that you've created with him and put into knowing and learning and receiving from him. So for me, it's everything. Like, even in I would say my low stages, it's like it has nothing. Like, at the end of the day, I have to really, it causes me to position myself, like reposition myself into a good place, or into a place where God wants me. Like, I was on with the Lace Did It relaunch, like, I would say, personal just testimony to what I've been going through recently. Like I would say, I'm not where my relationship I know it should be, and where it could be. But in the middle of this photo shoot, I'm sitting here looking at this greatness being produced, and I just can't help but feel like a humbleness come upon me. Like, it's interesting. Like, I really had to sit back and look at like what was being done and understand, like, you have a choice on the way you posture yourself now. And I felt that was from God. Like, I have a choice on how I posture myself. And what that simply means is I have a choice to how I now carry myself and where I'm going to put this, how I'm going to direct Lace Did It, how, like, where exactly, do I take this? What do I involve Lace Did It with? What do I say no to? What do I say yes to? What do I allow? What I don't allow? So it really caused me to position and posture myself in a place where it's like, how can I continue to give you glory? Because this is something that, when it gets to its highest height, like, at the end of the day, like, there was no way. And that's kind of like the story behind Lace Did It. If you don't mind,
go for it, man.
I kind of want to go into that a little bit too, because it's definitely related. Lace Did It is sort of, it has so many meanings, but the spiritual meaning behind it is it's really not me. And it's kind of funny because it's Lace Did It. My nickname's Lace. So Lace Did It, meaning like I did it. But at the end of the day, like, if he's inside of me and he's my creator and I have a relationship with God, like, there's no way I could have done this on my own. Like, there's no way, like, even inspiration, like, there's no way that your inspiration is just like generated from nowhere. Like, it has to come from somebody is inspired by something, whether it was something that they saw, whether it was something that like kind of sparked up, like it comes from somewhere. So at the end of the day, like, there is no way that this is just me. So it's sort of cliche to say I did it, but I really didn't. So that's what, like, that's kind of where Lace Did It came from. Is like, I did it, but I really didn't. So like, yeah,
that's good. And people rocking your brand are essentially, in a sense, proclaiming Jesus through what you've done.
Yeah. You're going to be like, I got you, but
everything,
Jesus now.
Everything has a meaning to it too. Everything has a undertone, even to the point of where this product is going. Like, it has a purpose behind it, because there's certain people too that I really do want to connect with that, and it's kind of interesting where I believe maybe, our culture in, in the church culture may not necessarily understand, but I know that it's meant to reach. I really believe I'm meant to reach. I'm influenced to influence. I'm influenced to influence the influential. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I was created to influence the influential. There we go. That's exactly what it is. So I really believe that I'm meant to connect with certain people, not necessarily to shove the gospel down their throat, but so that they understand who Jesus is. Because we may very much, I think Andy Mineo put something in his song where he was like, I might be the only Jesus that somebody else actually ever sees. Like there's like not everybody has my story, not everybody has your story on how you came to Christ and how you now know God. And it's everybody has experienced, like there's been people who've experienced traumas, and I've literally watched certain artists like interviews and stuff like that and seeing like, man, it's crazy because you're just like you went through that. Like, do you realize you went through that? Like, and that's serious. Like, it's almost like they're like, I feel sometimes where it's like, man, like I gotta kind of be like a therapist in a way, but it's really just like, it's just like, man, you really went through that. And that was something that you had to go through. And now like you are who you are because you went through it. And it's not to necessarily pity them or anything like that, but like this has contributed to who you are in both the positive areas of your life and maybe where it's like, it doesn't really contribute to anything positive. So
have you, being in the church, usually what's praised in church is oh, you want to be a pastor, you want to be a missionary, all these things. Have you ever got any either pushback, criticism, judgments, or anything under those nuances from someone in the church or someone of faith because of what you do, or because you're into design, into into these artistic projects?
So I would say personally that I've experienced, actually no, I have when I was younger, but I think that I came kind of from a dance culture too. I didn't mention that too, but also I came from crump. I don't know if you guys have heard of crump dancing.
Yeah. Crump dancing was big, man. Grew up in the 90s. It was all over.
Yeah, so like I was very much involved in I was a crumper, and that definitely had like its own story, like to contribute even to what I do now. But when I did do that, there was a lot of controversy also in the church with that. So it wasn't necessarily when I was designing or anything like that, but like it was very controversial to where some people understood it and some people didn't. And I do believe that crump was ultimately created to serve God and was created to glorify God. There's no way that which crump is very influential. It's still active today. And it has influenced not only, the hip hop culture, but even the way certain people will now move and dance because they have seen this. So there's no way that happens and it's not meant for something. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like God, like that's like saying like God created like roses and it serves no purpose on this earth.
I think that about cockroaches, but I mean, it works.
What is the, like everything, even the cockroach has its own, like whether we agree, whether we like it or not, it has its own little individual it was created to do something. Like, this is what he does, the cockroach. But I definitely kind of got pushed back from doing that. I'll say it really comes down to just having relationship with Holy Spirit, though, because Holy Spirit will really put you on. He will really put you on. God will really put you on. God will really tell you like why that happened. If you want to listen and you want to hear like what it is he's telling you, like he'll really tell you like, this is happening because of this, or this was created for this, or this is going down because of this. So I would just encourage believers like to understand that as God is the creator, there's no way that we have our own box that we can put God in. Like that part, like it's that simple. Like, God doesn't operate on our own constructs of a box. So as much as maybe, and I'm not attacking the church culture, I'm not attacking like certain believers who may not understand, but understand that God is the God who created everything. He's the creator of the Bible. He's the creator, like, you know what I'm saying? Like he's there's no way he was in a box from the get-go. Like, so he is the ultimate Alpha and Omega. You know what I'm saying? So like, we got to remember that God doesn't operate on our own understanding necessarily of him, or how do I say it? Like on our own expectation of him. Like, he operates on his time. He operates on a whole nother level that we may even understand in the moment. So
yeah, and ultimately God has a purpose, has a purpose through these things. And I want to touch a little bit about just your purpose in life in general, because I know a little bit about your story, Pete. Obviously we've known each other for some time, but I remember there was a season where pretty much you would have been dead.
yeah.
Like it was like, I saw pictures. I was like, bro, how are you still alive, man? Like, and I believe God has a huge calling in your life, and I believe at least did it is just the beginning of it. But if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that season and how that influenced you to kind of move into this new venture.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I would even say from that point, that was a big turning point in my life. Like that caused about like a whole series of fortunate events. So like, it definitely, it changed things because from that point, that happens. Like for what it is it's for, obviously, but I got into that accident in an Audi TT, and for those who do know that car, it's very compact. So that car is already a compact car, and rolling it down like a hill off of a freeway, and coming out of that car with no broken bones, no internal bleeding, nothing. Like that doesn't like that's it's like if you don't believe that God is real, like that should honestly prompt you like a thought to think like, all right, how did that happen? Like car rolls down freeway, very compact, no broken bones, no internal bleeding, and I believe I had an angelic encounter in that moment. And what I mean by that is I literally in that moment, I'll just touch briefly on that. Get down the hill, was worried. I was worried because I thought I was like under like a hill for some reason, because there was dust. Like I was on my side, there was dust coming out of the window, and I thought honestly my engine was gonna explode because I was hearing certain things like on the inside. I was like, uh-oh. So looking around for my phone's nowhere to be found. Like I'm like, dang, I can't even call for help. Like this is already a compact car, and I didn't see the way out. Previous to that, the adventure of actually strolling down the hill, I just remember having a brief moment where I was praying. It was interesting because it almost felt like it was in slow motion in a way. Like I remember having a brief moment where I was praying, and I was like, God, like if you get me out of this, I'll tell everybody about you. And then I just like was screaming Jesus down the whole way, like was literally screaming Jesus the whole way down. So when I get down there, I'm looking for my phone. I'm like, God, I need a way out of this. Like, how do I get out? How do I get out? I remember hearing, look to your right. I looked over to my right, and I happened to see that my trunk was busted, like with the glass already open, but the trunk was like floppy open. So I was able to get out of my car. Then somebody comes running down the hill. They're like, are you okay? Are you okay? Like, is there anything wrong? I was like, my back's hurting. Like, like this is hurting. This is hurting. He says, sit down right here. And I'm like, okay. He kind of pulls up my shirt. He starts rubbing on my back.
Really?
And I'm like, yeah, which is very interesting to me. It's kind of trippy. Like, because like when I think about it, because he just starts rubbing on my back. Like I'm thinking like maybe he's in medical, something. He starts rubbing on my back. I honestly start feeling like my back's getting warm. And I didn't know what that was, but I was just like, all right, I hope I'm all right. Like, like I'm kind of a little worried at that point. And so he helps me up the hill. He lets me, or I remember just him sitting me in a car, because there was other people who had already like kind of pulled off to the road. I remember sitting in a car, and then there's like these other people who are like helping me call the ambulance or like just checking up on me. And he's like, okay, I gotta get going. I'm like, okay. And I'm looking at him, and he kind of walks off. And then I don't remember seeing him get into a car. And that's why I think it could have been. I don't know. But he was definitely being used by God at some point, because like he I don't remember seeing him get into a car and like riding off. Like I don't remember seeing a car ride off. And from that point I was just like, dang, like that's crazy. So from that point, you know, that big turning point, it causes me to posture. I like to say posture because that very much like I learned that from my pastor, but like, you know, to posture yourself in a position, like a certain position means everything. Like that's like a heart, a mind, and a spiritual like position that you choose to take. So I really got into a place in a season where I was just like, nothing matters. Like it was really interesting. Like I was almost like, I think certain people might have even been concerned for me because they were like, I was like, nothing like here per se matters that doesn't have to do with God. And I really got into that position. And from that position, I was able to, you know, meet my spiritual mentor at the time, who invited me to, you know, he kind of was always periodically in and out of my life. And I believe I might have been supposed to move to Arizona a little bit sooner. And there was certain events that I went through because I might have not. But he kind of was like, always use he's a prophet. God's gifted him in prophecy, and so he kind of, you know, I got word through him, then I got word on my own from God to go to Arizona. So this is all like pivotal like points, moving to Arizona, getting involved with my pastor now. And the reason why I bring this up is because, you know, taking this position of humbleness and serving, and then actually pursuing what it is that God wants, even if it was not fashion. Saying, I'm willing to lay down my gifts. I'm willing to lay down whatever it is that I am capable of, like to really find out what it is that you want me to do in ministry. Like, do you want me to preach? Do you want me, whatever it is, like whatever it is that you're calling me to do, even if it's not fashion, I'm willing to give this up. And being in that position to then serving, and then later on now coming like back to this, and now to a point where like this, like the return means something. Like the Lace did it, the return, like that means something. Like it has everything to do, you know, with a new beginning. It has everything to do with I don't want to necessarily say redemption, but the fullness of something. So like I feel like Lace Did It is now like in the position, and like my fashion brand, my position that I'm currently in has everything to do with these major pivotal moments in my life that all started, I would dare say, with that car accident that I technically should not be here. If God didn't want me here, like I probably would have been gone that day. So yeah. There's
no doubt that that you have purpose, and that your brand, you know, the way that it is now is definitely in light of everything you've been through. But for someone who looks at your career, looks at your creations, and even at everything that you've been through, what advice would you give to someone who says, I want to do what Peter does?
So I don't want to say I mentor people now, but there's certain people who actually do come to me and they're like, you're doing what I want to do. And I'm like, wow, that's, you know, it's amazing, but I know where they're at, because I remember being on the outside looking in too, and wanting to do certain things and not necessarily understanding how to go about it. I would definitely advise a couple things. First thing would be to understand what it is that you're trying to do with fashion. Like, I'm gonna just kind of give some tips, like for those who are listening. Like, what is it? Yeah, what is it that you are trying to do in fashion? The reason why I'm saying this is you guys as entrepreneurs as well understand that upon taking a new business venture, upon being a business owner, upon being an entrepreneur, there's going to be certain hits that you may have to take, and there's certain calls that you will have to take, and it kind of, I don't want to say it necessarily develops stress, but you take on certain things that you might not take on by just working a regular job, and you just get your paycheck, you go home and all that. Like, it really takes what a lot of entrepreneurs and successful people talk about, like a why. Like, it really takes a why am I doing this, to take on certain, like, you know, certain hits that you might have to take as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, like, that you might not have to take. So what is it exactly that you are trying to do in fashion? What are you passionate about? If you're passionate about design, is this something that you now want to be a brand owner? I want to be a fashion brand owner, or I just want to design? Because a lot of people, and I think this is certain guidance for those who are pursuing this, they don't get the guidance and realization that I can be a designer for a brand that's already been established. I'm looking for a woman's designer right now. Anybody who's...
And you'll have less stress too.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm looking for a woman's designer right now for my brand. Like, not to say that I don't design women's fashion, but I know that there are people who... that's like
their bread and butter.
Yeah, that's their, like, that's what
yeah.
that's what they do. Like, and they've been doing that for years. So what is it you're really trying to do? That way, when you actually get to going, it's not just a good idea. You know what I'm saying? It's not just like it doesn't just become the bare minimum. It actually manifests into its fullness, because as you take that on, then you'll begin to understand that you take on certain hits that you might not have to take on, like how we were talking about. So what is it exactly that you're passionate about doing, and what is it that you love? If it's being a brand owner, do it, but remember why you started. Remember what it was that took you to actually start this. Second would be a mentor. I'll just give maybe 5 points. Second would be a mentor. Definitely seek out guidance in any form or fashion, whether that's schooling. If it is schooling that you feel is required, I'm not against going to school at all. Like, if it is, you know, if that is going to be the action that you need to take in order to get yourself going, go to school. Like, learn.
There's
have
networking in school too.
Right, exactly. Have a mentor. Have something that's going to cause you to produce an action, because your action is what's going to create that momentum for you. And it's really interesting. Like anytime you're having a low moment as an entrepreneur, as a creative, just do something. Do something small. It doesn't have to be a huge step. Do something so small. You know what I mean? Whether you're a musician, like hit a note, like on the guitar, you know, start thinking about your next song. Start thinking about what's next for you. So produce an action, have a mentor, find out what is it that's it's going to take for you to now make movement. Thirdly, I would just say, so mentor, schooling, really get involved with research. Very much like fall in love with research. Like, know if especially if you're going down the business owner lane, fashion brand owner lane, like, fall in love with research. Like, find out who it is that your competitor is. Like, find out what it takes to be a good business owner. Find out and don't let these be things that you stop you. Don't let the education part of it be the thing that doesn't produce your action. I think like David Ramsey has said something that was really like interesting, like how so many people want to get involved with like investing, but they're so like, I think it's called, he calls it like the analysis of paralysis or something like that. You get analysis paralysis. Like, don't get analysis paralysis, but definitely educate yourself with research. Like, find out who it is that you need to be reaching, what it is that you really want to do. And then even in that, with your mentor, with producing action, like, also have external whys, I'll say too, because these are also going to contribute as well. Like let whatever it is that you really want to do stand for something, because even in fashion, like, that's what's really going to separate you. There's so many people who are starting clothing lines. It's like, people in fashion like know it too. Like, it's ridiculous. There's a clothing line probably, and I'm not against people who want to start a clothing line, but every day there's probably a new clothing line that's going to come up. But who will actually stay? Who will stay consistent? Who will actually have longevity with what they're doing, and understanding why, having a purpose and finding your purpose in what you do is very important in this. And even I'll move into that, like, lastly, you know, have a relationship with God. Why? Because that's going to cause you to find out who you really are. There's no way you find out who you really are on your own. It really took me, I'll just, my example, it really took me even getting back to a place of humbleness to know, like, to find out what it is that I really wanted to do, to find out what it is that God was calling me to do. Because as I said, like, I thought for the longest time I was going to be like a pastor. Like, turns out, like, my ministerial gift is evangelism. Like, who knew? You know what I'm saying? Like, who knew? All right, that's amazing. Boom, like, Lace Did It is born. Like, purpose is being served. Like, I'm using Lace Did It to glorify God. I'm using whatever it is that I'm doing to glorify God, whether that's investing, whether that's art, whether that's music. Like, I'll do it. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, like, I hope that you will see Jesus behind it. So definitely find out who you are so that you stand solid. Like, and these are all, like, behind certain ones, certain, like, tips I feel like I gave that are going to be very practical and, like, all right, like, I'm going to get right to it. But, like, also pay attention to what's going on with you mentally, spiritually, because that will really contribute to how you lead your days and schedule yourself and actually find research and actually put into, like, your work doesn't work unless you work. Like, you don't, and if you don't work,
I'm gonna tweet that, bro.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if this doesn't work up here, if this isn't working over here, and your spirit man, like, ultimately contributes to both your mind and your heart, like, there's no way you can get up in the morning and tell yourself, I'm more than a conqueror. There's no way that you get up in the morning and tell yourself, I can do all things through Christ. There's no ways that you can get up in the morning and tell yourself that I'm a winner. Today I'm going to make 10K. Tomorrow I'm going to make 20. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no way that you have that belief in yourself if this doesn't, like, it doesn't work. So definitely pay attention to the behind the scenes on what's going on with you as much as you pay attention to your productivity. Big practical tips. Fall in love with research, educate yourself, and definitely know what it is that you're trying to do, pinpoint, and don't feel like you're rushed. Don't feel like this is something that you're going to have to operate on somebody else's schedule. Like, this is your baby, your creativity, your music, whatever it is that you have to offer is your baby, and you take the time to feed it, you take the time to grow it up. So
That's good, man. And one thing I do want to kind of touch a little bit on is because you've recently relaunched Lace Did It. Mm-hmm. And you relaunched Lace Did It, I would say, through some very interesting times, a global pandemic. Mm-hmm. How much has that affected, if you will, the relaunch or just your creativity or just being creative as a whole?
So I just want to make sure I'm staying on topic too. So this, we're talking about COVID as far as how it contributes to my business, correct?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So this is actually very interesting because I was really working a lot of behind the scenes for Lace Did It in Dallas. I was planning a vacation with my work to come out here for about a couple weeks to get this started, like the actual action of it, like it's when it's concerning, like, to actually making the clothes. And this pandemic hits, and now it sort of limits travel, and now it sort of limits, well, is anything open in the fashion district? Can I get my hands on anything to actually get produced? So at first, it was very much like a no-go. I think when COVID first started, like, there's no way, like, this is happening right now. I just stayed diligent behind the scenes, developing the business plan, developing the marketing strategy, developing, everything that you have to work with behind the scenes. And then, suddenly my job says, we are going to allow you guys to work from home. So, and why is this beneficial to me? Like, and it's not to say that COVID is like, oh, like, we're so happy about COVID. I'm so happy about COVID.
Thank you, COVID.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like COVID definitely exists. There's definitely a pandemic. There's definitely something going on in present that might be a negative force or a negativity in your life. But as much stuff that negativity that COVID has brought, there are certain positives that you can really find just given what's going on, especially as a business owner, especially as somebody who's trying to be productive or trying to achieve their goals. Like, and that's really what this kind of did for me, is I chose, instead of to take on everything that was negative going on with COVID, I chose to take what was positive. So I end up working from home. I'm in touch with my brother who lives out here, is very involved with the fashion district and everything that goes on, like with stuff being open down there. I keep in contact with him and I'm like, hey man, what's going on down there? And, he was letting me know, like, this is closed, this is closed, this is closed, this is closed. Then this kind of dwindles down. Certain places out here start to open. Dallas is really shut down at that point. Dallas was like, everything was closed. Like, we only want curbside, like, don't come in, don't nothing. Out here, I think they were starting to allow people to sit down and stuff like that. Stuff opens up out here. Boom, I just take the opportunity. I'm like, I need to go. And I'm like, I don't know what it was. Like, I do know what it was. It was definitely God. But I definitely had a sudden urge where I'm like, if I don't go now, like, I don't know how long this is going to take to actually produce something. So I'm like, all right, let me get down there. So I get down there. Perfect timing. Literally, my brother says that when I came down here was when certain places that I needed were open. And it was situations where it was like, that's where the favorite comes in, because it's like everything was closed and I'm like, all right, so now everything's open. So now I'm able to produce this. So for me, I really just chose to work with the positives. Stuff began to open up. Certain doors began to open up for me where it was like, this person was staying later suddenly, and they normally don't stay later. Like, and it's COVID. Like, and they're trying to go home. Like, I don't want to be out. Like, that's the whole point, 6 feet apart. Like, so, and certain people are like, you know what, like, I'll stay open for a couple minutes. They're open for a couple minutes. So it really, what I feel like was negative ended up turning around for my good. And it really was just like certain doors that were opening. So COVID overall, though in the beginning, I feel like there was a pushback. I think those who really sought the positive aspects that they can do within their own life, not necessarily what was happening externally, but what they could do with their own life, really presented opportunities for them.
So if you had to put it down, like, in a percentage wise, for the success and the favors that you've had, how much of that would you attribute to your talent and your hard work, and how much of that would you attribute to God's blessing, his favor, and him opening doors?
So I'm going to say it like this, because I need to, because I'm going to answer that question. I'll answer it like this. It's going to be 1% and 1% me and 99% God. And the reason why I say that, I'm not saying it doesn't take any work and you don't do the work, or the work doesn't exist. I'm not saying any of that. It's just that if I could really contribute to everything that I've, even other, like when I first started Lace, did it years ago, if I can kind of collect all the information and everything that I did on my own versus when God actually opened up doors, it's insane. Like anything that I could have produced, like, would have maybe moved me an inch. But then these encounters and these doors that have opened have literally been like, here you go. Here you go. Here's resource. Here's another resource. Here's another resource. Like, here's this opportunity. So I'll definitely put it as 1 in 99 from what we understand. However, realistically, I feel the way it looks is God, I don't want to say he doesn't operate on our percentage scale. We understand the percentage scale, but he has his own percentage scale. And it's really 100% for him when he gives you favor. because favor, you don't necessarily, like, God's not a genie. Like, I don't be like, I mean, I can pull on God, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can go to God with your request, you can pull on God, but he's not a genie, so he doesn't have to do anything. Even when we do good, even when we don't do good, you know what I'm saying? Like, there have been moments where I was like, I didn't feel like I was in the right place, and he was just like, here you go. Like, and that was just favor. So God definitely operates on his own percentage scale, and from what we really operate, even on the hard work and what we put into it, is definitely still, you need to give your 100% on the percentage scale, just like God gives his favor on the percentage scale, because not only is he worthy of what you put into it, but even as it's you know, in the Bible regarding the parable of the sower, like, it's still spiritual. Like, your work and what you actually do is still spiritual, because faith without works, it's clear, faith without works is dead. So what I do is definitely important. So you need to give your 100% in whatever it is that you're doing, because when it comes back around to your turn, and it's a situation where it's like, what did you do with the seed that I gave you? What can you say?
Boom.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what can you say? Like, what did you do with what I gave you? And I definitely don't want to, you know, for those who are YOLO, very much like, you know, you only live once, like for those people who are like that, like, definitely take the time to actually live that out and understand, like, what you do matters, and definitely take advantage of the time and what you've been given. Last tip for those who were listening on, you know, what it is that they should do if they were getting involved. Definitely, what was I gonna say? Dang. Yeah, definitely give, you know, I lost it. It'll come back. But yeah, it's pretty much, it's just along the lines is there you go. Utilize what you've been given first. You may really feel like you need to have everything in order to start something, and you really don't, because God's given you certain aspects. You may have a cell phone that has access to the internet. You may have, you know what I'm saying? Like, you may have, like, cloth. You may have your grandma might have a sewing machine. Like, your friend might actually have a printer. Like, you know, so start somewhere. Like, start with what you know. Like, sit back and actually understand, what resources do I really have and that are readily available to me, and how do I use them smartly? So
no, that's really good, because a lot of the best movies out there today were made with limited budgets, whereas, you know, the movies that had all the money in the world, you know,
they don't always make the best movies. No. Peter, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. I think it's just full of knowledge, full of wisdom, full of, like, amazing stories, and I just want to. Can you let the viewers and the listeners know where they can find your stuff and where they can find your work?
Man, definitely go to www.lacedidit.com. Definitely go on Instagram and add @LaceDidit. That's LACEDIDIT. And definitely go on Facebook and add the same LACEDIDIT. Also follow For What It's Worth. I'm gonna throw that in too, because definitely my brother and For What It's Worth definitely has a lot to do with where Lace Did It is as well. So that's IVWHAT. That's on all social media platforms. And check out his website, forwhatitsworth.com.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time. And
thank you.
I'm very, very hopeful, and I'm very I can't wait to see what you're going to be putting out there. I've already seen the return, so I'm excited. I'm excited for your future.
We'll be rocking Lace Did It.
Man, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.